And I hope you guys rot in hell. Why did you guys run away when you knew you couldn't stop them? Why?
Felony murder, I sentence you to life without the possibility of parole. Count 3, violation of Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act. Whoa. Family.
Some stay silent, others sneer. In courtrooms, these gang members revealed chilling truths. From Josiah Hughley's ruthless carjacking to Russell Courtier's cold attack. Their sentences came, but remorse never did. These were the moments that ripped through courtrooms with chaos. Let's begin.
Possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
It was supposed to be a simple stop for air in his tires, but in just minutes, Bradley Coleman was gunned down by gang members. What followed was a murder trial, a grieving family's emotional plea for justice, and a mournful courtroom outburst that no one expected. Bradley Coleman was only 29 years old. He was a beloved father, a mentor to young athletes, and a man his community respected deeply. On that day in 2022, he stopped at a Gwinnett County gas station. 3 alleged 9 Trey Bloods gang members tried to carjack him. They were known for stealing cars, and this time, their target was Bradley. The confrontation was quick, vicious, and senseless. In front of strangers going about their day, Bradley was shot dead. The investigation moved fast. Prosecutors identified the trio, Josiah Hughley as the shooter, David Booker as armed backup, and Miles Collins as the getaway driver. They had built a reputation for conflict, but this crime crossed a line that could not be ignored. The initial trial in October 2023 ended in a mistrial after the judge ruled that the prosecution made a prejudicial statement that jury instructions could not mitigate. In the retrial, Bradley's family faced the men who killed him. One by one, they poured their hearts out in victim impact statements.
I hate y'all.
Mr. Coleman.
Look, lock them up and throw away the key. That's it.
His aunt called the killers.
They hunted my nephew down like a wounded animal and shot him dead for a car.
And Bradley's mother, through tears, reminded the court of all her son had accomplished. How he was a father, a coach, and a leader. She begged the jury to deliver maximum punishment. The motive was as cold as it gets. These men wanted his car. They weren't willing to work for what they wanted. They decided to take it. And in doing so, they took a man's life. The jury didn't hesitate. All 3 defendants were convicted on every charge. Judge Tamala Adkins then turned to Josiah Hughley and announced,
Possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
and then sentenced each of them to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice, at least in the courtroom, was served. But even in that moment of justice, pain boiled over. As he was led away, Miles Collins turned to the Coleman family and sneered, "I hope y'all are happy." That taunt ignited fury. Bradley's brother leapt out of his seat, ready to fight, before officers restrained him.
The family of Mr. Coleman. The family of Mr. Coleman.
Outside the courtroom, his mother said,
They were not going to get away with it. They messed with the wrong one.
his killers will spend the rest of their days behind bars, but for his family, the wound of that day will never fully heal. A father, a coach, a leader, gunned down over a car. But our next case brings us to Los Angeles, where the music world was shattered when a rising star was savagely killed.
Find the defendant, Eric Ronald Holder Jr., guilty of the crime of first-degree murder.
In a silent Los Angeles courtroom, the jury delivered a verdict that closed one of the darkest chapters in hip-hop history. Eric R. Holder Jr. was found guilty of killing Grammy-nominated rapper Nipsey Hussle, a man who had dedicated his life to lifting the very community where he was gunned down. On March 31, 2019, Nipsey Hussle stood outside his clothing store, The Marathon, greeting friends and fans. His career was on the rise. His Grammy-nominated album, Victory Lap, had cemented his place in music, and he was deeply invested in giving back to the community where he grew up. That afternoon, a familiar face appeared. Eric Holder, an old acquaintance from the same street gang. What began as a casual conversation soon grew heated. Words were exchanged, voices tightened, and the mood shifted sharply, leaving tension hanging in the air. Holder left the lot, grabbed 2 guns, and came back. He fired at Nipsey, hitting him at least 10 times, then kicked him in the head. 2 bystanders were struck by gunfire. Security footage, witnesses, and Brianita Nicholson, who unknowingly drove him, tied it all together. Nipsey was rushed to the hospital but didn't make it. Soon after, Eric Holder was arrested. The trial revealed chilling details about the day Nipsey Hussle was killed. Prosecutors described a brief, tense conversation between Nipsey and Eric Holder, where Nipsey confronted Holder about rumors he had been cooperating with law enforcement. A serious accusation in the gang world. Holder walked away from the parking lot, but not for long. He stopped along the way to eat a few bites of chili cheese fries. One prosecutor even described it in court.
He needs additional money to pay for a drink or something. He goes back into the Master Burger. He then walks out and walks over to the group again.
Then, almost 9 minutes later, Holder returned calm, deliberate, and armed. He marched back toward Nipsey and opened fire, hitting the rapper at least 10 times before even kicking him in the head. 2 bystanders were also struck in the crossfire. His defense team argued it wasn't premeditated, just a heat of passion, but the jury didn't buy it. They watched the footage, listened to the witnesses, and after just 2 days of deliberation, they found him guilty of first-degree murder. So why did Eric Holder kill Nipsey Hussle? Prosecutors said it was over pride and respect. Nipsey never threatened him. He only urged him to clear up the rumors of being a snitch. But in Holder's mind, those words were enough to spark rage, enough to push him to kill a man admired worldwide. In July 2022, more than 3 years after the shooting, Eric Holder Jr. was convicted of first-degree murder, along with charges of assault and possession of a firearm as a felon. He was sentenced to 60 years in prison, yet as the verdict echoed through the courtroom, he showed no hint of remorse.
The total sentence would be 60 years to life in prison.
Nipsey Hussle's death left a hole in Los Angeles and in the hip-hop world. A rapper admired worldwide, gone in seconds over wounded pride. But another case staggered the entire U.S. as a preacher secretly ordered killings and walked free for decades.
The person who's told the secrets of the past is Edgar Ray Killens.
He sat in the courtroom, calm and composed. A preacher, a man of faith. But decades earlier, he had ordered the killing of 3 young men, and for more than 40 years, the question remained, would justice ever catch him? In the summer of 1964, 3 young men, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, came to Mississippi. Their mission was simple, to help people vote and to stand for equality. But instead of being welcomed, they faced danger. Behind that danger was Edgar Ray Killen, a local minister who also worked as an organizer for the Ku Klux Klan gang. When the 3 activists suddenly disappeared, the whole country began watching. Weeks later, their bodies were discovered, and investigators knew something terrible had been done. Edgar Ray Killen and others were arrested, but the system at the time was resistant. In 1966, a jury could not reach a decision. One juror said she would not convict a preacher. Killen walked free. For decades, families and journalists refused to give up. They pressed for answers, uncovered new evidence, and demanded accountability. Finally, in 2005, 41 years after the crime, Killen was brought back to court. At 80 years old, he appeared frail, but this time, the truth spoke louder. On June 21st, the very anniversary of the murders, he was convicted of manslaughter. Why did it happen?
And I says, so why are you opening up now? He said, well, he says, the right thing to do.
The 3 young men wanted equal rights and change, but many people didn't want that. Killen brought these people together to stop these young men. Finally, Killen was found guilty of manslaughter.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Edgar Ray Killen, as to count 3, guilty of manslaughter.
Judge Marcus Gordon gave Killen the maximum sentence, 60 years behind bars. 20 for each life he took. No parole, no excuses. Even at 80, justice did not wait. The preacher was sent to prison, showing no regret for his actions. He remained behind bars until he died in 2018 at the age of 93. For the families, it was a long-awaited moment. Not full justice, but a step toward healing. Justice delayed, but not denied. Killen finally died behind bars, and yet, in another courtroom, a gang member faced his own reckoning after killing 2 innocent teenagers in a park.
Do you guys see the pain that I'm going through right now?
The judge's gavel hit the bench, and silence fell. 2 teenagers, enjoying a peaceful evening in the park, were gone in an instant because of a deadly mistake. The courtroom demanded the truth. Robert Alcee Beharan sat accused of murder.
We want so we can have a better, safe community for our kids and for our family.
Just before 10 p.m. on May 3, 2011, gunfire suddenly shattered the peace of the park. Out of nowhere, gunshots echoed through the night. Multiple bullets tore through the air, striking a young couple who had only come out to enjoy the evening. Panic spread instantly, and within seconds, 2 innocent lives were stolen. Witnesses recalled the chaos, saying the couple had been hit multiple times. By the time police arrived, both teens were dead. The investigation revealed the shooter was 21-year-old gang member Robert Alcee Beharan. He claimed he thought the teens were tied to a rival gang that claimed the park. 2 other men, Justin Gibson and Kenneth Dwight Hamilton, were with him. They later pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter. A 4th man, Tyrone Blackman, admitted to helping after the crime. Beharan pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder on September 5, 2016 in Vista Superior Court. Prosecutors could have sought the death penalty, but a plea bargain gave him life in prison without the possibility of parole. However, he showed no emotion at his sentence, though he gave a chilling, wicked stare. The killings were completely unprovoked. The teens were innocent victims of gang conflict, and the killer offered no answers, no apology. The families of Sandra and Fernando faced unimaginable grief. Sandra's father said
that he took away this daughter of mine, and he took it away from my heart.
The loss will be forever. She will never be replaced. 2 young lives erased in an instant. But our next case pushes humanity to its darkest limits, where a gang member hunted down a teenager mercilessly.
The case is going to turn on. What was in Mr. Courtier's mind? What were his thoughts?
A young man tried to get away. A gang member chased him. In a tragic moment, the young man lost his life. Now, the court has sentenced Russell Courtier to life in prison. Russell Courtier, a 40-year-old gang member, was sentenced to life in prison for killing 19-year-old Larnell Bruce Jr. in Oregon. He won't be eligible for parole for 28 years. On August 10, 2016, outside a convenience store in Gresham, Oregon, a fight broke out between Courtier and Bruce. The conflict seemed small at first, but it escalated fast. Bruce tried to leave, but Courtier got into a Jeep and chased him down. Surveillance footage later showed Bruce desperately trying to avoid Courtier. Police arrived after receiving a call about a hit and run and found Bruce critically injured. He later died in a hospital. Courtier was not just acting out of anger. Prosecutors revealed he was motivated by prejudice. His membership in the European Kindred Gang came from a desire to be part of a brotherhood, according to the court. The jury found that Courtier treated Bruce unfairly because of his racial background. The judge said,
"And those acts that you've committed have forever changed lots of lives."
In Oregon, intimidation motivated by prejudice is considered a targeted attack. Courtier was found guilty of murder, felony hit and run, and intimidation. He was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 28 years. However, he chose to remain silent at his sentencing. Courtier's girlfriend, Colleen Hunt, who let him use her Jeep, also pleaded guilty to manslaughter and got 10 years. Bruce's life was cut short because of anger. Justice was served, but the loss remains heartbreaking. One of the family members of the victim said,
"It wasn't until I took the time to realize what he lost too that it made sense to me that..."
Next up, a man who planned a killing with chilling precision. David Parga turned a cold contract into a deadly reality.
To you specifically, I want to say sorry to what happened to your son. I know the pain you're feeling. My mom comes to see me, she cries because what's happening to me, and I could only imagine what you're going through to lost your son.
On October 29, 2006, 27-year-old Leland Washington was leaving a Halloween party after he had been invited by some of his friends. He was reportedly asked to leave because most of the partygoers were gang members. Washington had returned to the party with a group after he was kicked out. As he was leaving, David Parga, a member of the La Habra street gang, walked up to Leland and shot with a .22 caliber pistol. David had shot him multiple times without any form of provocation. David and his gang felt that Washington was disrespectful to them because he had returned to the party. Leland's friends put him in their car before driving to UCI Medical Center in California, where he was pronounced dead. Leland Washington was 1 semester away from graduating with an accounting and business administration degree at California State University. He was not in a gang and had no gang affiliations. David Parga was arrested and charged with felony murder. Parga represented himself in court and was found guilty of second-degree murder. During sentencing, Leland Washington's family gave their impact statements in court. Leland's brother talked about how he found the grief of losing his brother too much to handle.
Days that the grief is so much that I just kind of muddle through the day. You have to understand who he was. He was such a great person, and the way that he died, he did not deserve that at all.
Leland's sister also talked about how much emptiness was left behind by her brother's murder. She said, "Halloween weekend will never be the same for us. It's ironic that we are here today to sentence the man who murdered my brother. It is not fair that his life was taken away by a non-productive member of society." Leland Washington's mother told the court that David and Leland may have been friends if they had known each other. She said, "I think if Mr. Parga had ever known him, he couldn't have been anything but a friend to him. He couldn't have found any other way but to make him a friend." Parga was allowed to speak to the victim's family, and he seemed to show remorse for his actions. Parga apologized for senselessly murdering Leland Washington. The judge in his final sentencing called Parga a coward because he had shot Leland for no obvious reason. In 2013, Parga was sentenced to 50 years to life in prison for the murder of 27-year-old Leland Washington. While David Parga apologized and showed remorse for his actions, what do we say about a convict who begs people not to be like him?
The life that we was living, being in gangs and all that other stuff, it ain't worth 16 years or a death, because eventually you be put in a situation and there's severe consequences that come with that.
This is Tariq Mikel Jackson, who is on trial for murder in Michigan. On July 12, 2015, 16-year-old Tariq Jackson allegedly pulled out a gun and opened fire in public after a fight broke out between rival Ypsilanti gangs in 2015. One of the bullets that Tariq had shot hit 20-year-old Keandre Duff in the head, killing him instantly. Tariq was charged with open murder, armed robbery, receiving and concealing a stolen firearm, 3 counts of felony firearm, and 11 counts of perjury. However, shortly before he was set to go on trial, he confessed to second-degree murder. This murder was not the first time Tariq committed a crime because he had a lengthy criminal history. In 2012, he was placed on probation as a minor for a first-degree home invasion. He was also placed on probation for a third-degree home invasion in August 2014, before being arrested for carrying a concealed weapon a few months later. He was eventually sentenced, and it was an emotional day for everyone there. The mother of the victim gave an impact statement.
Our whole world was turned upside down from that point. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because that when our children make these decisions out here.
Keandre Duff's mother blamed the gang culture the men found themselves in. She addressed Tariq directly as she delivered her statement. She said, "Our whole world was turned upside down. Our young men are lost out there. I don't want to see another young man go behind bars." Duff's mother also told Tariq that she forgave him and hoped he found salvation. Keandre Duff had previously been charged with the murder of 17-year-old Keon Washington. The charges against him were later dropped due to a lack of sufficient evidence to charge him. Tariq eventually had his chance to address the court, as he apologized for his actions, showing remorse and obvious regret for his actions.
First off, I just want to say sorry to the family of the victim. I wish the situation would have played out like that. I never thought that my choices and decisions would have affected so many people. No mother deserves to bury her son, and no mother deserves to see her son change. My bad choice led to a lose-lose situation for me, my family, and the family of the victim.
Tariq went on to warn other gang members, telling them to learn from him because what they were doing wasn't worth the consequences. He warned his brother and friends who were involved with gangs to stop so they didn't end up like him. Tariq Jackson was sentenced to 17 to 40 years in prison for the murder of 20-year-old Keandre Duff. He is currently serving his sentence at the G. Robert Cotton Correctional Facility. Unlike Tariq Jackson, Luis Bracamontes showed no remorse in court. Instead, he vowed to kill again if given the chance.
Be silent. Be silent.
I will break out soon and I will kill more.
On October 24, 2014, Luis Bracamontes, an illegal immigrant from Mexico and substance dealer, murdered 2 police officers and severely injured another in Northern California. Luis fatally shot a sheriff's deputy named Danny Oliver of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department because the officer had been examining Luis's car. After killing Oliver, Luis stole a car and fled to another county where he shot 2 other officers, killing Detective Michael Davis of the Placer County Sheriff's Department. Before he added the brutal murder of these 2 officers to his list, Luis had already gotten on the bad side of the law multiple times. He was an illegal immigrant and had already been deported twice. In 1997, Bracamontes was arrested in Arizona because he had been selling narcotics. The authorities later found out that he was an illegal immigrant and Bracamontes was deported. He was, however, arrested again for selling substances in 1998. Undercover police officers had bought small amounts of illegal substances from Bracamontes before arresting him in Phoenix. He was released only to be arrested and deported to Mexico in 2001. Bracamontes had illegally migrated back to America again, and at the time he committed the murders, he was using the name Marcelo Marquez. After he shot and killed the 2 police officers, Bracamontes went on the run. Luis stole several cars to escape the police, and an extensive manhunt was launched to find him. He was eventually taken into custody, and his court hearings lasted about 4 years, due to his erratic and unpredictable behavior, which will be covered later. The news of the murder became widespread, especially since it had happened around the time that the Obama administration updated immigration policies, which allowed Bracamontes to stay in America that long without being deported. In 2017, Donald Trump invited the widows of the officers Bracamontes murdered to a joint Congress. The motive for this was not revealed until 2018, a week before the midterm elections. Donald Trump's administration ran an ad which linked Bracamontes and the murders to the Democrats. The ad accused Democrats of allowing dangerous immigrants into the United States. This ad was heavily criticized and condemned by both party members across the country. A Republican senator called the ad sickening and said it was a new low in campaigning. Amidst the nationwide outrage over the ad, Bracamontes' hearing had to be rescheduled multiple times until 2018 when he was finally sentenced. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. Luis initially pleaded not guilty, but he could not keep the facade on any longer and revealed his true colors in the courtroom. His actions were despicable.
Ladies and gentlemen, please step out of the hallway. Dead.
Bracamontes kept on promising to kill more police officers when he broke out of prison as the procedure went on. It was later revealed by one of the earlier sheriffs who had arrested him that Bracamontes held severe hate for the legal system and police officers. Eventually, Bracamontes admitted to murdering the 2 officers. He told the court that he saw no point in trying to prove whether he did it or not when all the facts pointed to him being the killer. At this point, his attorney gave up defending him and said the same thing to the court. It was no shock that Bracamontes was found guilty.
Mr. Bracamontes is responsible for the deaths of both Deputy Danny Oliver and Detective Mike Davis.
After hearing he was sentenced to death, he cheered audibly when his sentence was announced and smiled before his behavior became more unsettling. He blew kisses, smiled, and clapped towards the victims' families. Finally, as he was being led away, he made a chilling threat for the court to hear. However, it seems like Bracamontes will never get the chance to do as he threatened, because he was moved to death row in Quentin State Prison a few weeks after his sentencing. Luis Bracamontes vowed to kill more, but David Moses brought a whole new meaning to the term no remorse.
The chuckle, a laugh, and yawn after yawn, David Moses acted strangely at his sentencing this morning.
In April 2010, 17-year-old David Moses and 2 girls entered the home of 81-year-old Dorothy Session in California with the intent of robbing the home. David Moses and the 2 girls, 17-year-old Angelique Nash and 15-year-old Katila Nash, had planned to rob the house because they thought no one was around. Angelique was left outside to be the stakeout, while David and Katila broke into the house. Upon finding out that someone was in the house, David Moses did the most shocking thing. As Dorothy resisted, Moses beat her mercilessly until she died. Catilla also watched as David pummeled Dorothy to death. The police found Dorothy dead and her body was riddled with injuries. She had a broken nose, missing teeth, black eyes, and cuts to her mouth and face. Moses was eventually found and arrested before he was finally convicted of first-degree murder 2 years later when he turned 19. The two sisters were arrested as well, and they were sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. It was later revealed that Moses grew up without a father figure, and he was raised by his mother until he was 12 years old. He became a ward of the court and was eventually bounced between group homes due to his erratic and violent behavior toward the other children. While Moses was in the group home, he committed multiple crimes including carjacking and burglary, which led to the murder of Dorothy Session. He was eventually brought to court in 2012. In court, Moses' behavior was shocking to the core. He showed no remorse for his actions and laughed throughout the session. In an attempt to show that he found the procedure boring, Moses yawned and put his head on the table, mimicking falling asleep. At some point, Moses also licked his lips to show that he didn't care and that he didn't believe that anything was wrong. Some online participants assumed that Moses behaved that way because he thought he'd be protected by juvenile court laws, no matter what he did in court.
The chuckle, a laugh, and yawn after yawn, David Moses acted strangely at his sentencing this morning.
David completely fell asleep at some point and didn't care for anything that was going on. The prosecutor said it seemed to him that Moses was enjoying the trial and felt like it was a game. Despite these actions and how he showed no remorse, his attorney asked the judge to consider including the possibility of parole in his sentencing. However, the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. David showed no reaction and merely licked his lips as he was escorted out. David's case remained closed until 8 years later, when it looked like things were going to change for David. A change in law led Moses to be resentenced. He was tried under juvenile conditions because of how old he was when he murdered Dorothy. He was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in 2020 because he showed no form of change since he was sent to prison and still showed no remorse for his actions for the brutal murder of Dorothy Session. During his resentencing, David remained nonchalant, but this time he had no smile on his face and just stood in defiance as he still had no regard for the court. David Moses didn't get a second chance, but Brandon Spencer still has a petition 10 years later to set him free.
Eligibility is 15 years plus 25 years of life in accordance with Penal Code Section 12022, 3D. This is to be concurrent with the
On October 31st, 2012, 19-year-old Brandon Spencer got involved in a shootout with a rival gang at a Halloween party on the University of Southern California campus. As a result of the shooting, 4 people were wounded, and the area descended into mayhem. While many students ran away from the shooting, Spencer reportedly ran with the students before he was caught. Brandon was charged with 4 counts of attempted murder. It was revealed in court that shots had been fired into the crowd in retaliation at another gang member. In 2014, Brandon went to trial. Despite the fact that all the people called to testify in the case said that Brandon could not have been the shooter because he was never involved in any kind of gang. The court denied him a lawyer and charged him on a witness's testimony and no evidence that linked him to the shooting.
I'm sorry for what happened, Your Honor, but I need some life in prison. And I'm not a bad person, but I made mistakes. But I'm not just some gangbanger that she tried to portray me as.
Spencer kept on insisting that he was innocent and kept on pleading for mercy because he admitted to making mistakes. However, the jury refused to take any other thing into account besides the fact that Brandon had shot into an open crowd, even though he didn't murder anyone. In under 3 hours at trial, the jury found Spencer guilty of all charges, and he was sentenced to 40 years in prison. In response, the 19-year-old broke down as the judge showed no ounce of mercy.
Parole eligibility is 15 years plus 25 years of life in accordance with Penal Code Section 12022, 3D. This is to be concurrent with the
Spencer banged his head on the table twice and cried until he was escorted out. In 2021, however, a podcast was released on the story of Spencer, and his case garnered attention once again. The podcast claimed that Brandon had not shot into the crowd and was only celebrating Halloween with his girlfriend at the University of Southern California. However, the jury portrayed him as a gangbanger, and the testimony of the star witness was all that was used to convict him. The podcast also revealed that Spencer had been shot in the stomach outside a restaurant, and the USC shooting was retaliation, a mistake that Spencer regretted. The star witness recanted their testimony after the investigation revealed that the witness who had been brought in to testify against Spencer was coerced because he had been arrested for an unrelated crime. The prosecution reportedly promised to get the witnesses' charges dropped if they testified that they had seen Spencer shoot into the crowd that night. The witness was charged with stealing $26,000 worth of merchandise from his employer and was not sentenced because he agreed to perjury. The witness said, "I did not see Mr. Spencer leave the party and come back with a gun. I did not see Mr. Spencer shoot a gun into the crowd or at Mr. Hall. I only said that I saw Mr. Spencer come back with the gun because the DA prosecuting the case told me that she needed me to say those things, or else she could not make her case for premeditation. I did what the DA said because I was threatened by the detectives investigating the case, and by the DA prosecuting the case that if I did not say what they needed me to say, the DA would intervene in my own pending criminal case and cause me to be harmed or sentenced more severely." After this was revealed, a Free Brandon Spencer movement began and 1,800 people signed the petition for Spencer to be released because he was innocent. An Instagram account was created and the petition to free Brandon Spencer after he spent 10 years in jail is still ongoing. Brandon Spencer's case highlights the devastating impact of gang violence, but the horrors don't stop there. Jay Witt's story takes us down another dark path, a calculated crime driven by chilling motives.
Finding a man wanted for murder. Take a look at him, 47-year-old Jay Witt. He faces a second-degree charge of murder in the death of 48-year-old William Furlong. Police found his body at the Hells Angels headquarters at 27th and J last month.
On the 14th of July, 2013, a high-ranking member and a prospective member of the Hells Angels got into a fight at the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club building in Omaha, Nebraska. Jay Witt and William Furlong, both 48, were having a disagreement when Witt allegedly pulled out a gun and shot Furlong. Unfortunately for Witt, Furlong couldn't survive the inflicted wounds and was eventually found deceased. A warrant was issued for Witt's arrest. Investigators were then able to track Witt through the GPS in a vehicle he had stolen before arresting him around 2 weeks later. Following his arrest, Witt was charged with second-degree murder, as well as charges for the use of a weapon to commit a felony and possession of a weapon by a felon. In response to these charges, during his October 2014 trial, a judge found Mr. Witt guilty of the crimes. However, the second-degree murder charge had been dropped in favor of a manslaughter charge following an earlier guilty plea, which Witt made in exchange for the dropping of his murder charge. While in court, one detective testified that she had found Furlong's body lying face up near the bar area of the clubhouse. Another testified that surveillance footage from outside the clubhouse had shown a man similar to Witt enter into the clubhouse with his girlfriend at around 2:15 a.m., less than 3 hours before Furlong appeared. The video in case showed the man who resembled Witt and his girlfriend leave around 9:30 a.m. with a plastic bag before he's once again spotted, wiping down the door and door handles of a Chevy Cruze with towels before leaving in the vehicle. The woman in the video was identified in court to be Tammy Kozak, and she was charged with tampering of evidence and accessory to murder. And a sergeant in the court testified that she, along with Witt, had stopped at a gas station after they fled the scene before they drove to Harlan, Iowa, probably to get away from the center of the crime. During his court hearing, Witt maintained an ice-cold demeanor, just as you would expect from any Hells Angel. But at the end, the judge sentenced Witt to 30 to 40 years in prison, of which the first 17 and a half must be served before he would be eligible for parole. Witt showed no emotions after listening to his sentence, and even reportedly claimed he did it out of self-defense. Furlong's wife was present in court and came to the defense of her deceased husband, saying he shouldn't be judged by his outward appearance. Witt sadly died in September 2019 at the Nebraska Department of Correctional Services, following a long battle with illness. He was 53 years old at the time, and state law required that a grand jury conducted an investigation into the situation.
Yeah, I'll see you all in hell, too. Remember that. Every one of you, I'll see you in hell.
Let's head to Hampden County Superior Court, where a dramatic scene unfolds when Caius Veiovis was to be sentenced for 3 counts of murder. Caius Domitius Veiovis, real name Roy Gutfinski, was born in Augusta, Maine, and was a self-proclaimed vampire and Satanist with a bizarrely distinct look. His implanted head bumps would resemble horns, his reshaped earlobes, and his dozens of tattoos, including one on his forehead which reads 666, certainly don't paint the look of an angel. As far back as the year 1995, a 13-year-old Roy Gutfinski Jr., who had already developed a fascination for devil worship, was already getting into serious trouble with law enforcement. When he was 20, a prosecutor recommended that he be kept behind bars for as long as possible following a ritual bloodletting case with his then-girlfriend, which left a 16-year-old girl scarred for life. Gutfinski ended up serving a 7.5-year sentence for this. Gutfinski struggled with substance abuse from a very young age and was in and out of jail a lot between the late 90s and mid-2000s. He constantly referred to himself by the police as a vampire and began to alter his looks, which ultimately culminated in legally changing his name to Caius Veiovis, after a vampire from the TV series Twilight in 2008. In 2011, 3 men, David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell, were found buried outside of Pittsfield, Massachusetts 10 days after they were reported missing. There were 3 suspects: 37-year-old Adam Lee Hall, 47-year-old David Chalou, and Caius Veiovis himself, who was 34 at the time. Prosecutors accused Veiovis of helping the other 2 men kidnap and shoot the victims in order to prevent them from testifying after they witnessed the death of Glasser, who himself was eliminated to prevent him from testifying in a case against Hall, who was a high-ranking member of the Massachusetts chapter of the Hells Angels. Veiovis' trial began nearly 3 years later in September 2014, as he was already pretty notorious at the time, so it was no surprise when a media frenzy erupted around the case due to his involvement in the case. During the trial, both Hall and Chalou were convicted of 3 counts of murder, kidnapping, and witness intimidation, and sentenced to life in prison. Veiovis was the last out of the 3 men to face trial, and he pleaded not guilty to all charges against him. Despite the various pieces of evidence which suggested his involvement in the murders, Veiovis' trial was a rather lengthy one and had to be moved 50 miles to Hampden County Superior Court in Springfield to avoid a biased jury. Veiovis tried to maintain his innocence for as long as possible, claiming that he had rejected all the plea deals offered to him from the beginning and that he'd rather do life than accept any of those deals. His court-appointed attorney, James Reardon, also accused the state of lacking concrete evidence against his client. After over 37 hours of deliberation spanning 6 days, the jury found Veiovis guilty of kidnapping, murdering the 3 men, and he was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without the option of parole.
As to each of the 3 counts of murder, impose a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole.
And Veiovis' reaction to the jury's verdict was something you could have expected. "I'll see you all in hell. Remember that."
Yeah, I'll see you all in hell, Louis. Remember that. Every one of you, I'll see you in hell.
He also revealed that he was going to appeal the verdict to the state Supreme Court. Veiovis, meanwhile, is currently completing his term at Gardner, Massachusetts, North Central Correctional Institution.
Hells Angels just shot at Vagos. There's 2 down.
Let's head to Henderson, Las Vegas, where things escalated into attempted murder on a local highway between 2 rival motorcycle gangs. It was a Memorial Day Sunday morning on the 29th of May, 2022, when members of the Vagos Outlaw motorcycle gang were shot at on a highway while riding back from a Memorial Day event in Boulder City. The perpetrators? Some members of the Hells Angel Motorcycle Club, of course. Police were able to arrest 3 of the suspects, 66-year-old Richard Rizzo DeVries, along with 46-year-old Stephen Allo and 26-year-old Russell Smith. DeVries was eventually identified as the president of the Hells Angels Las Vegas chapter, one of the most powerful chapters of the club, while the other 2 were said to be Hells Angels prospects. Police reports recounted that while the Vagos members were trying to participate in the prior event, a group of 5 Hells Angels members were seen riding around and followed them till they began to cause problems during the event. They also reportedly left the event about 20 minutes before the Vagos members began riding towards Henderson, where they waited to ambush the Vagos gang. The result was injuries to 6 of the Vagos bikers and a closure of the highway for several hours, as the police conducted an investigation while the injured bikers were transported to a local hospital for treatment. Investigators, in collaboration with the Las Vegas Met Police Department's Criminal Intelligence Unit, were able to identify the 3 suspects using surveillance footage, as well as civilian footage of the shooting. This ultimately led to the June arrest of DeVries and the other 2 men, who were booked into the Henderson Detention Center on the charges of 6 counts of attempted murder with a deadly weapon, a single count of conspiracy to commit murder with a deadly weapon, 6 counts of battery with the use of a deadly weapon causing substantial harm, 6 counts of discharging a gun at or into an occupied structure or vehicle, with the latter 2 charges labeled to have occurred with a criminal gang enhancement. 5 additional Hells Angels were also indicted by a second Clark County grand jury in connection with the incident, and additional charges included attempted murder, racketeering, as well as harboring concealed weapons. A Las Vegas former special agent, Aaron Rouse, suggested that the arrests could lead up to a federal prosecution for the Hells Angels on RICO charges based on the group's activities. That kind of thing has the potential to dissolve the Hells Angels Las Vegas chapter. DeVries was able to post bail following his indictment by the Clark County grand jury. His court appearance was set for the 24th of August, 2022, where he appeared with his attorney, Richard Schoenfeld. But on the 3rd of October 2022, he was rearrested and taken back into custody on additional felony charges, which included racketeering. In the court, he showed a cool and calm demeanor, as if to suggest to the court that he had it all under control. This time, 8th District Court Judge Tiara Jones ordered DeVries to be held on a $250,000 bond, which he once again posted. During a separate court hearing set on March 31, 2023, which involved all the other suspects, DeVries' attorney, Richard Schoenfeld, suggested that the evidence used to indict the Hells Angels members was insufficient. He also claimed that Vagos members had concealed weapons during the incident, and that police at the scene had examined some of their handguns only to return them. As a result, the judge instructed prosecutors to revise the indictment. On Monday, May 1, 2023, Clark County District Judge Tiara Jones decided that the 7 alleged Hells Angels members would not be facing racketeering or gang charges for their involvement in the highway shooting, which left a total of 7 people injured. During the hearing, Judge Jones also reduced the number of shooting counts from 25 to 5 in the case against the defendants, including Richard DeVries. DeVries' attorney, Richard Schoenfeld, revealed his pleasure at the judge's ruling, claiming that the initial indictment was too broad and had to be revised. DeVries, along with the other 6 men, which now include Cameron Treach, Aaron Chun, and Ryan Molasco, still face prosecution on charges of attempted murder, battery, and assault with weapons. And even though they've all pleaded not guilty to the charges, they each face up to 40 years in prison if convicted. A trial date has been set for the 28th of May, 2024, a day short of the 2-year anniversary of the incident. For now, the 7 men, including Richard DeVries, are free, but they could be facing the same fate as others on this list by the time you watch this video.
The case has been described as the biggest and most complex gang prosecution in the province. During the trial, 6 state witnesses were murdered.
George Jewel Thomas, notorious as the leader of the feared 28s gang in Bishop Lavis, found himself at the center of the country's largest gang trial, accused of orchestrating killings and ordering assassinations while he was locked up in prison. In a trial where only 1 out of 18 accused was acquitted of all charges, all testimonies pointed at Thomas's involvement. One witness recounted the gang's attempt to assassinate Curtis Esterhuizen, a member of the rival Clever Kids gang who survived a shootout on April 14, 2008. The very next day, police caught 3 individuals, including George Thomas, after a shooting incident in Bishop Lavis. Thomas was allegedly found in the back of a bakkie, armed with a rifle equipped with a telescopic sight and silencer, while others carried a box of ammunition in the front. But the terror surrounding Esterhuizen's life didn't end there. On September 8, 2008, a 3rd incident occurred where shots were fired on the street where Esterhuizen resided, paralyzing 1 person. Tragically, during a 4th attempt on November 23, 2008, Marvin Esterhuizen lost his life simply because he was mistaken for his brother Curtis by attackers. Despite surviving a point-blank shot to the head on November 2, 2009, Curtis Esterhuizen declined the offer of witness protection, only to meet his demise 5 months later while riding his bicycle in Bishop Lavis. The 28s gang was regarded as a criminal enterprise operating under the leadership of George Jewel Thomas of the Cape Flats. Seated beside him in the dock was Ashraf Arab Rycliffe, a leader of the 26s gang, known for their bloody turf wars with the 28s. Despite the rivalry, it was alleged that the 2 gangs conspired to eliminate the father of a key witness in the trial, Cecil Barnes. Tragically, Barnes was fatally shot in his kitchen in Bishop Lavis on October 16, 2010. Despite the dangers posed by his involvement in the trial, Cecil Barnes chose not to accept the state's offer of witness protection, standing firm alongside his son, Regan Barnes, in their pursuit of justice. The indictment against Jewel Thomas listed a staggering array of charges, including 19 counts of murder, 29 attempted murders, extortion, racketeering, incitement, conspiracy, theft, robbery, and possession of firearms and ammunition. the state planned to summon 370 witnesses, with several of them placed under witness protection for their safety. But several state witnesses met untimely deaths, allegedly on orders from Thomas while he was still in prison since his 2008 arrest.
During the trial, 6 state witnesses were murdered, allegedly on Thomas's instructions while he was incarcerated.
According to many, Thomas was responsible, all while being locked up in his prison cell. One chilling instance of allegation is that Thomas ordered the assassination of Andrew Williams over a phone call from inside a cell at the Delft police station on May 5, 2008. And in May 2015, George Jewel Thomas received life sentences for each of the 7 murders for which he was convicted. Despite all the lives he took and the families he destroyed, Thomas maintained a smug demeanor, his arrogance palpable even as the weight of justice bore down upon him. He was found guilty on a staggering 53 charges, including 7 counts of murder, 2 of racketeering, and multiple other serious offenses. The convictions spanned a series of gruesome crimes, with Thomas held accountable for the deaths of individuals such as Angelo Klassen, Glenston Martin, Uzrea Abrahams, Haywen Stridham, Cecil Barnes, Gresham Boyson, and Nadine Davids, each tragedy leaving a deep scar on the communities affected. Accompanying Thomas were 16 co-accused, all facing a multitude of charges amounting to 166 in total, encompassing murder, attempted murder, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit crimes. His co-defendants, sharing the dock with him, also remained stoic in the face of their convictions. Our next case of the Carpio brothers is almost like it's out of a blockbuster gang movie.
2 gang members were sentenced today for killing a teenager on a high school campus in the Valley.
In the late afternoon of April 24, 2013, Antonio and Michael Stephen Carpio, known as the Rockwoods, due to their affiliation with the Rampart area street gang with the same name, arrived at Cleveland High School to pick up their 15-year-old brother, George, who was a student. Raised in Los Angeles, the Carpio brothers had been initiated into one of the notorious Rockwood street gangs in the Westlake area, which led their family to move to Panorama City in hopes of distancing themselves from the grip of gang life. It's speculated that one or both of the assailants may have also attended Cleveland High at some point, according to accounts from students. It was during this visit to the school that they encountered Kevin Orellana, a former student who still visited the campus to play handball with his friends. Orellana, an 18-year-old known for his athleticism and agility, was also called La Pulga, in English, the Flea, for his small stature and lightning-fast reflexes as a soccer goalie. Despite having graduated from Reseda High School a year prior, Orellana continued to spend time at Cleveland High while attending the West Valley Occupational Center in Woodland Hills to complete his high school education.
As a parent, we plan to dance at their wedding, celebrate a promotion, look forward to possible grandchildren. The last thought we would ever have is that we will have to plan their funeral.
Kevin Orellana of North Hollywood aspired to be a rapper, with plans to pursue enrollment in Cal State Northridge's esteemed kinesiology program as a backup. Despite his shaved head and numerous tattoos, Orellana staunchly distanced himself from gang affiliations, a fact reiterated by both Doerbecker and his family members. But his encounter with the Carpio brothers made everything crash. As the elder Carpio asked Orellana where he was from, insinuating gang ties, Orellana firmly denied any such association, saying that he belonged to no gang. The altercation escalated swiftly, with the taller Carpio initiating physical violence. Yet Orellana, despite his smaller stature, quickly gained the upper hand. But the confrontation took a tragic turn when the younger Carpio brother brandished a knife from his pocket and delivered 2 fatal stab wounds to Orellana's chest. Afterward, the Carpio brothers quickly fled the scene, with members of the Cleveland football team in pursuit. Despite efforts to catch them, the brothers managed to escape to a maroon minivan. Orellana was quickly transported to Northridge Hospital Medical Center, but it was too late to save him. Medical examination revealed a fatal stab wound piercing his heart, sealing his untimely demise and leaving a community reeling in shock and grief. Upon arriving at the crime scene, the police documented every detail. Among the array of evidence, they noted the remnants of the victim's clothing and traced a trail of blood and red stains on the asphalt, which suggested a frantic escape. One notable detail that caught the police's attention was a water bottle belonging to a teacher who tried to help the victim. But it was the unwavering courage of the student witnesses that left a lasting impression. Despite the looming threat of retaliation in a gang-affiliated case, these young individuals stood firm, eager to provide invaluable testimony. One particular student informed provided key details, linking one of the suspects to a distinctive tattoo often seen on campus, ultimately leading to the identification of Michael Carpio. Following their apprehension at their residence in Panorama City, the Carpio brothers offered varying accounts on the events leading up to the fatal stabbing. Michael Carpio claimed that Orellana had provoked him with a threatening glare, while Anthony initially denied involvement before eventually conceding to being present on the campus. But when pressed for a motive behind the stabbing, Anthony's response remained cryptic. In the end, Anthony Carpio of Panorama City and his brother, Michael Steve Carpio, from Pacoima, were found guilty on October 31, 2015, of second-degree murder in connection with the tragic death of Kevin Orellana. Anthony, who was 16 years old at the time of the fatal incident when he wielded a knife and inflicted multiple stab wounds upon Orellana, received a sentence of 16 years to life in prison. Meanwhile, his older brother Michael, who was an adult at the time of the April 24, 2013 killing and was reportedly unarmed during the attack, was sentenced to 15 years to life behind bars. This case serves as a tragic reminder that the mentality of gang members can have a devastating impact on the innocent. If the Carpio brothers hadn't gotten involved with their gang at such young ages, Kevin Orellana would be alive today. Now, we're going all the way to Springfield, where a Latin King member is facing first-degree murder charges.
Charged with robbery, drug crimes, and other offenses. A spokesperson for the district attorney's office, Jim Lagden, told 22 News another defendant, Jonathan Guevara, was also charged with the murder of 18-year-old Lopez.
The discovery of 18-year-old Latin King member Kenneth Lopez's body on March 25, 2015, sent shockwaves through the city's north end. Found in the yard of a house at Dwight and Calhoun Streets, Lopez had succumbed to fatal gunshot wounds sustained overnight. The perpetrator behind this was revealed to be a 25-year-old Latin King member, Lee Rios. Following the murder, Rios stockpiled ammunition and firearms as he believed that the gang would seek retribution for his actions. The murder of Kenneth Lopez was not a spur-of-the-moment act, but rather a meticulously planned and aggressively pursued crime. Rios himself orchestrated the murder with calculated precision, with the help of fellow Latin Kings members. Despite both Lopez and Rios being affiliated with the Latin Kings, their relationship had soured, leading to a falling out between them. In an attempt to reconcile their differences, Rios devised a plan to lure Lopez from his residence under the guise of resolving a personal conflict. But his intentions proved futile, and it culminated in a tragic and fatal outcome. On February 7, 2017, Lee Rios faced the consequences of his actions as he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As he listened to the judge reading the verdict, Rios' demeanor was quite calm for someone who just found out that they will be spending the rest of their lives behind bars. Some stay silent, others sneer. In courtrooms, these gang members revealed chilling truths. From Josiah Hughley's ruthless carjacking to Russell Courtier's cold attack,